telling you that tonight's shiur is Le'ilui Nishmat Avi Mori Dov Ber Meir Ben Reuven Halevi Imi Maroti Rachel Bat Harav Michael, my parents, and of course tonight we're talking about parshat Vayishlach. And firstly, as I said, welcome to everybody. Welcome back to Dave and Jackie from your trip. David, I've already welcomed back. Jackie, the first time I'm seeing you, so welcome back. The parsha of Vayishlach, I'm focusing primarily on the first chapter of the parsha of Vayishlach, even though you'll read, if you read what it says there are two chapters in the Torah, Perek Lamed Bet, Perek Lamed Gimel. Going back to the way they're written in the Torah, this is all a single chapter, a single paragraph in the Torah. And it is probably, if I were writing the table of contents to the Torah, this chapter would be the reunion or the meeting between Yaakov and Eisav. Clearly, we know from the end of last week that Yaakov is heading home after 20 years of being with Lavan. He hasn't seen anybody from his old family in 20 years. He's got a whole new family traveling with him. And the parsha, I guess I think most of us are familiar with the story of the parsha. Very simply, Yaakov is on his way home. He finds out that Eisav is coming to meet him, and he does all these various things. And I wanted to try to focus us on Yaakov's frame of mind as he is going through this process. And that's what I've tried to focus on a little bit. Or what my goal is to try to focus on tonight. So I hope you'll all bear with me, and away we go. So the first box you'll see very simply is what I call the intro to the story. Yaakov is on his way home. He chooses to take the initiative. It says, Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav Eisav achiv. Yaakov takes the initiative to send, I don't know whether we want to call malachim messengers, whether you want to call them emissaries, whether you want to call them scouts, but clearly he sends somebody ahead of him, some type of advance party. There's machloket among the parashanim as to whether these were human messengers, because the word malachim, which we can translate as angels, is also the same word for human messengers. And clearly, there are many times where in Tanakh where this word is used. Simply, you send somebody as your emissary ahead to find out, get a scouting report, or some such. So clearly, these are not spies because they're not being sent secretly. He sends them openly, and I would have said that if I were translating this, I would say Yaakov sent a delegation to Eisav. He's sending a delegation of some people or some angels, although, as I said, the simple translation seems to be these are a group of people. And he sent it to Artasir Sedeadom. He knows that Eisav by this point has moved to the land of Seir, and that's where he sends the messengers to. Now, the commentaries have a whole lot of discussion. The Parshanim, and this goes all the way back through the Talmud, has a whole discussion about whether this was an appropriate thing for Yaakov to do or not. He did not have to pass through Seir on his way home from Lavan to get back to Hebron, where his parents lived. There was absolutely no need for him to take any kinds of detours where he would have had any hope of encounter or expectation of encountering Eisav. The fact that he is sending emissaries to Seir means that 20 years have passed, and he, at least on the surface, seems to want to effect some kind of reconciliation. That's why he is taking the initiative and approaching Eisav, rather than just saying, I'll just ignore him, I'll just go home, and if he finds out, he finds out. But he takes the initiative. As I said, the commentaries are divided as to whether this was an appropriate thing to do or not. And the implications that we as Jewish, as representatives, or as what are we learning? What are we supposed to learn from Yaakov when we have to approach a foreign power or a foreign state? And this specifically has undertones when we discuss the Hashmonaim, the later kings of the Hashmonaeans, who had a dispute over who should be the next ruler, and they called on Rome to very nicely mediate their dispute. Well, very poor choice, perhaps, but different story. But again, whether we should be doing that, in other words, whether we should be taking the initiative to approach other powers or not is a great debate among the Parshanim and among, as I said, it goes all the way back to the Talmud. So Yaakov gives them a message to tell, and it's very interesting. Again, same problem occurs here. It says, Ko tomrun la'adoni li Eisav. This is what you should tell my master Eisav. Again, the Mefari Parshanim say, what do you mean Adoni li Eisav? No. You want to send to Eisav, fine, but don't call him my master. Anyway, I've been with Lavan this time, and I've gotten all these possessions, and I'm sending them. I'm sending emissaries to you because I'd like to find favor in your eyes. I am requesting that, we're brothers. I'd like to go on living as brothers. Whatever happened years ago, let's forget that and let's move on. At least that seems to be the tone of this message. Now, interestingly enough, and this is, I think, what the medrash that bases the fact that these were angels and not human emissaries, because it says, Vayashuvu hamalachim, the angels returned. It never mentions that they left. It says Yaakov gives them this command. It doesn't say they left. So what kind of messengers can come back before they've even come? Must have been angels. That's not really good, because the word Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim implies that he already sent them out, even though he hadn't. It doesn't say officially that they say that they went. Clearly, he sent them, so they must have done something. They didn't just stand around and say, "Well, is it time to go yet?" But anyway, that's what the Parshanim who say that they were angels seem to base it on this by Yeshua Malachim, that they come back before they've even left. Anyway, we went to now. The news they bring is very interesting. Somehow, it appears that Eisav already knew that Yaakov was on the move. We don't know how that happened, although the Parshanim want to say that Lavan sends a little message to Eisav saying, "Oh, by the way, okay, Yaakov, I'm finished with Yaakov. You can take care of him now." But again, that's midrash. The pasuk simply says that when the emissaries get there, they say he's coming to meet you. And here's the key thing: okay, he is traveling with an entourage of 400 men. Okay, so the question we have to ask ourselves, okay, 20 years ago, you had this great feud, right? Now you find out that your brother is coming to meet you with 400 men. What would your response be? Well, fear. You and what army? I'm just repeating the comments so people on the Zoom can hear it. Yeah. Our natural reaction would be, wait a minute, he's not having 400 people because he wants to throw a huge bash here, right? That's not the rationale. Interestingly enough, this is a complete sidelight to the whole shiur. I just found it interesting, the fact that the number 400, okay, the significance of the number 400, it appears very, very few times in Tanakh as a whole. 2 times we had it in Bereshit, are both dealing with Avram. One is 400 years, that the day that there's this covenant that Hashem has made with Avram, that somebody somewhere is going to be something for 400 years, just sidelight. The other thing is when Avram buys the Machpelah, he pays 400 silver pieces. Just food for thought. I'm not going to say there's any connection between any of these 400s, but it's the only 3 times in the Torah that the number 400 appears as itself, rather than 426 or 20,400. It's the only time you have Arba Meot as a number. Just food for thought. Again, what is Yaakov's response? Absolutely, exactly as you said. What is he coming with 400 men? There must be something going on here. So it says, Vayira Yaakov Ma'od Vayetzer lo. Two expressions of fear, worry. Vayira, he is in dread. Vayetzer has caused him great distress. And Rashi quotes midrashically that Yaakov is afraid, firstly, hey, he's coming 400 men. Who's going to win this? If there's a war, who's going to win? I got me and my sons, and he's got 400 men. So he's afraid, obviously, that he's going to be killed. But Vayetzer lo it troubled him that he might have to kill somebody else in self-defense. This is what is troubling. That's midrashic interpretation. Clearly, the literal sense is that he is worried. I think obviously the fear is the fact that Eisav was coming with 400 men, but I think by Yetzirah that he's troubled by the fact that, I thought the 20 years, bygones would be bygones. We'd be finished with what happened 20 years ago. Obviously, that does not seem to be the case from the fact that he's coming at the head of an army of 400 men. Just as a comparison, when Avraham fights the war against the 4 kings, after they've defeated the 5 kings, he brings an army of 318 men with him. Just to put this number 400 in perspective. 400 men doesn't seem today, when we think of armies in the thousands and the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands, it doesn't seem like that big a force. But as I said, for those times, 400 men seems to be a rather significant force. Okay. So if we look, as I said, now you'll notice we've got 3 different columns. The parshanim all clearly see this. The parak clearly lies out. Yaakov has 3 different sets of preparation. And the challenging thing of this three sets of preparation, as usual, is how does one emotionally and intellectually handle all 3 and do all 3 wholeheartedly? And we know the 3 clearly are being military preparation, prayer to God, and sending some type of delegation, some type of bribe, gift, or negotiation. The challenge is to do all of these wholeheartedly without taking God out of the equation. That is the big challenge. In other words, if we are preparing ourselves militarily, it seems they're saying, okay, God, we know we need your help, but we know we have our job to do also. When we pray to God, we're clearly saying, God, we don't have the ability on our own to do this. So we're acknowledging God. But the 2, as I said, militarily preparing and sending a negotiating party seem to be contradictory. How can you negotiate in full confidence or with full authority, knowing that they're getting ready for war behind you? Conversely, how can you not get ready for war? Because what happens when the negotiations break down? So these 3 seemingly, not necessarily all agreeing, are what Yaakov teaches us, that yes, you have to do all 3. We have to try to find a peaceful solution, but we always have to be ready to fight as the backup solution. We don't want to, but it's got to be there, and we can't skimp on that because we may need it. By the same token, we also have to realize that whichever course is going to be successful, we hope, is only going to be successful when we have God's help. And praying to God and causing ourselves to acknowledge that is a critical component. So part and parcel of our response has to always be to acknowledge the fact that whatever course we are embarking on, we need God's help. The Midrash brings a very, very fascinating statement that says that I think it's I forgot who it was. One of the Chachamim in the times of the Talmud was often sent, because of his position, was often sent to be the emissary of the Jewish community to Rome. And it says that before he would embark on this journey, he would thoroughly review this week's parshat, these 2 chapters that we're talking about, to be prepared for any eventuality. In other words, the point being that Yaakov here is setting a precedent that says everything that we do has to be ready for all eventualities. And this is a precedent that we at least when we've been a sovereign nation with the ability to have a military, we've generally done that. Unfortunately, when we've been in Golah, we've generally relied on the middle column and the 3rd column, paying whoever it was off, and we haven't had the ability to rely on the choice of building an army and equipping ourselves and fighting militarily. That hadn't been the option between the Bar Kokhba revolt and the pretty much the end of the Mandate era. That was not seen as an option. So each of these 3 options has to be on the table. and has to be, but as I said, but the middle one has to be the focal point. That's why it's in the middle, because both sides have to look to that. Whether you are preparing yourself militarily or you are preparing to try to negotiate / pay off the people who are looking to destroy you, you always have to know that without God's help, neither of these are going to be successful. And if we think ever as the Jewish people that we are stronger than anybody, any nation on this world, without God's help, we are in big trouble when we think that. Okay, that's sideline. Okay, the other point is, interestingly, the Torah gives us insight into Yaakov's thought process. Okay, this word Vayomer here, even though it says Vayomer and he said, doesn't say it to anybody. This is why is Yaakov distressed, and what is he going to do about it? What he does about it is Vayachatz. Well, the action that he takes is Vayachatz et Omar Shirito. He splits the people into two camps. And his thought process is, why does he split into, wait a minute, one camp together would be stronger, you would think, rather than splitting into two different camps. His thought is, if Eisav is able to successfully destroy one of the camps, at least the other one will have that time to run away and escape. Interestingly enough, many of the Parshanim tell us that this has been almost the mantra for the Jewish people through exile, so that when they're persecuting Jews in Europe, in the Arab countries, they might be welcoming Jews, and if they're persecuting Jews in the Arab countries, they may be welcoming them in somewhere else. And the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has split us up always is probably what ensured that the Jewish people would survive the 2,000 years of Golah that we've been in, when everybody's out to destroy us. So that's, again, an allusion to this fact that it's not always good for all the Jews to be in the same exact place. Okay, that's an interesting thought that Yaakov wants us to understand, and the Torah wants us to understand that by giving us specifically this insight into Yaakov's thought process. Yaakov's prayer, very simply, he prays to Hashem, basically he's saying to Hashem, look, before I left, you promised me this, you promised me this, you promised me this. I need your help now. I've needed your help for the last 20 years, obviously, but I really need your help. I want you to make sure that Eisav isn't going to destroy me, okay? And again, he basically says, you've promised me that everything will be okay, and please fulfill the promise, okay? Now, after that, we read the third phase, which is what I will call the negotiation / payoff phase. But it starts with a very interesting phrase. This is Vayolen Sham B'Layla Hahu. Okay, Yaakov slept there on that night. So in other words, he's gotten the messengers have come back. Everything that's happened to the messengers have come back has happened is in real time here. So in real time, he split this camp into two. He prays to God, and now it's nighttime, and he goes and he sleeps where he's camped, which seems strange that the Torah should bother telling us this. But I think what the Torah is trying to tell us is that Vayolen Sham isn't necessarily that he slept there. He sort of camped there because he couldn't sleep, I think, because he's still very, very agitated. And that's why I'm guessing that he gets up in the middle of the night and plans what he's going to do first thing in the morning. And he immediately decides he's going to send this massive tribute to Eisav, his brother Eisav. Now, interestingly enough, the Torah then goes and explains in great detail. The Torah spends 2 whole psukim describing exactly what this tribute was, and I'll read it very quickly. It's 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 female sheep, 20 male sheep, 30 nursing camels and their nursing children, 40 female cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. So, first question is, anybody have a clue how much that was? What type of, is this here's a little gift, or was this here's a huge tribute? That's my question. What do you think? Take a guess.
Huge.
Sounds huge. Thank you, David, on the call. Thank you. And the consensus here, everybody got, yeah? Okay, I decided, I've never done this before. I decided this year I was going to go look online did a little Google. How much does a camel cost? How much does a goat cost? How much does a sheep cost? How much does a cow? How much does a donkey? No, how much now? Now, just because if I tell you that it was worth 300 gold pieces, you're still gonna have, well, how much is that? So what I did is give me a minute here. I'm gonna pull up another little screen that I did. This is just to give you an idea. I have to just go to here. I am screen sharing. I need to pull up another. Hold on, I got to pull up a different screen. 1 minute. Apologize for the fact that I'm not so adept with all these things. Let's pull up. Where is it? Here we go. Okay. They gave each of them. They gave a range. Okay, so I had to pick the range here. And they did not differentiate between male and female. So, firstly, there's a total of 580 animals. By the way, there's a difference of opinion. And one midrash says there are only 550 because there were not 30 male camels. There were 30 baby camels, so they don't count in the number. There were 30 mothers who were nursing 30 babies, so the 30 babies don't count. The other midrash says no, that it's because camels are very modest in their sexual behavior. It didn't mention the males, but there were 30 males for 30 females. So either case. Yes. Oh, it's the midrash specifically says that Yaakov specifically prepared the appropriate number in each herd. There's the appropriate number of males that will satisfy that number of females, or that number of females that will satisfy that number of males. In other words, there's a correspondence. In other words, it says, I guess every male goat needs 10 females because once the animal becomes pregnant, she's no longer interested. So anyway, so I took I gave you a high, a low, and an average. The total cost on the average cost, according to the average of the prices, was over $1 million. Okay, so it's somewhere between $500,000 and $1.5 million is the value today of what these animals would have cost. I said, I've never done something. Let's find out what kind of gift was this. So that's just a sidelight. I don't think that is anything to. I think Yaakov again, as with always. Hang on a minute. I gotta stop and start again. Let's get back to the screen now. I think the point is that I'm trying to make by that saying that is that even if it seems to be a rather significant cost, it's much better to pay in money than to pay in lives. I think that's Yaakov's clear message to us, that it may seem like a small fortune, but again, we don't have any clue what Yaakov's net worth was. He may have been, a multi-billionaire. He may have had thousands of each of these flocks. So we don't have any clear clue, but nonetheless, it is a rather significant tribute. Or the envy that yeah, it certainly would give us an insight as to why Lavan's sons last week's parshat clearly were a little bit upset that Yaakov had made all this money off of their father. Or quote, off of their father's wealth. Yes. Okay. So Yaakov then gives it over to his shepherds. He has it, and he specifically, again, another very, very interesting phrase here. He says each flock should travel separately, and verevach tasimu bein eder vein eder. Another that there should be a space between each flock. Again, the Bali Musar, the Bali Parshanim say same thing applies to Jews throughout history. We hope that God gives us a revach, a space between each anti-Semitism, each outbreak of anti-Semitism, that there should be spaces between them. Again, allusions, because this is Yaakov and because it's this whole story of meeting Eisav, the Parshanim try to find allusions to Jewish history and and the history of anti-Semitism in this parsha, even though, remember, we still have no idea. We know Esav's coming to meet him. We have no idea what Esav's frame of reference is. We know Yaakov's frame of reference clearly because the Torah is describing it, but we don't have any idea what Esav's reference is at this point. And we're not going to. And yes, it's quite difficult. I was thinking about it. Other bringing a huge number of men with it. Again. You say, what other, just so people online can hear what David asked, what other interpretation could we make of him bringing so many people with him? Again, think about the groupies who travel along with, rock stars, or think about when the president or the prime minister travels, how much, what their security detail and the press detail and the, I don't know, all the other, the detail has to go eat his food before he can eat it in case he's being poisoned. I don't know. I have no idea what that comes out to, having never worked in the prime minister's office. Yes, you got to. I mean, it's 400, 400 people. We don't, Yossi mentioned that we did 400, says Abrameot each, it says 400 people, could have been a mixture of men and women, who knows? We don't know. I mean, again, people back then generally, I know if you read anything about these periods of time, primarily before there was, interstate roads and whatever, people did not travel, certainly at night, alone. It was not a wise thing to do if you valued long life, because of brigands, because of all sorts of things that you might bring on the way. We tend to think of, okay, he was on the highway and motoring along to be. Yeah, he wasn't. He was traveling through lots of different places, and he might have been bringing. Now again, do you need a caravan of 400 people? I don't know. I don't know what the average size of a typical caravan was back then. Who knows? But clearly, Yaakov takes it the way David took it. That clearly there's something here. But as I said, we don't necessarily know how Eisav is, what his thinking is at this point, and we may never know. Okay, I mean, we know what happens when they meet, but we don't really know. Okay. Sure. Jackie's question is, could he be planning to go home like Yaakov is on his way home and he's taking his whole entourage? The implication from the beginning of the parsha is that Yaakov sends messengers to Seir, where Eisav is living. And it says, well, Esav's on his way to meet you. Again, why would Eisav have been going to meet him? There's again, the whole rationale that, first, how does Eisav know that Eisav, if Eisav was looking to get him, he had 20 years. Why is he suddenly after 20 years waking up? That seems to be the question. But maybe for now he realized, oh, Yaakov's on his way home. Let me meet him. Maybe you're right. Maybe he was planning on joining him to go visit Abba. He hasn't seen Abba in a while. I don't know. We don't know. That's my point. We have no idea what's Eisav's motivation, how he's traveling, why he's traveling, where he's traveling. We don't know. Okay.
Eisav may have been frightened.
I'm sorry, Eisav may have been
frightened himself.
May have been frightened of Yaakov, and that's why but he didn't. But my point is, Eisav clearly is the one who was already home and seemingly didn't have to come out to this meeting. I mean, Yaakov is on his way somewhere, so he has to travel through, this point, because he's coming home. Eisav already was home. If Yaakov is sending the messengers to Arza Seir, to the land of Seir, which is where Eisav lives, then why is Eisav coming out at all? Why didn't he just stay home? Okay, so that's, I think, why the question of how many people are with him is bothering Yaakov. Why is he traveling with such a large entourage unless he means, something inappropriate? At least as far as I'm concerned, inappropriate. Maybe as far as he's concerned, it's very appropriate. Okay. And again, you also have to remember that the last communication they've had was 20 years ago, and the communication really wasn't a direct communication. It was sort of like Rivka telling Yaakov, "You better skedaddle, because I've been hearing that Esav's looking to take care of you." So from that perspective, you have to understand that's Yaakov's only frame of reference, is that Eisav wants to kill me. He doesn't have any other frame of reference because nothing's happened as far as his relationship with Eisav in the last 20 years. Okay? David, does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. He gives each of the shepherds in charge of each of these flocks different commandments. And again, the Torah gives us Yaakov's frame of mind. And it's a very interesting one here. But Martem, and you should tell after you've told Eisav everything, Gam hinei avdecha Yaakov acharenu. Your servant Yaakov is traveling after us. After you see all these flocks, Yaakov is going to be at the end of the procession. Ki Amar, because Yaakov, now this Ki Amar, we don't know if that's part of the message or this is again the Torah telling us exactly how Yaakov is feeling. Yaakov is feeling, notice the theme word there of my face. Yaakov wants to see him, wants to understand because until he sees him and meets him, he doesn't know how he feels about him. So he has this obsession that I have to meet him face to face. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to first appease him before we meet, and then perhaps he will be willing to meet me face to face. Okay, that's the end of the preparation. We now continue with the story. The gift in verse 22, the gift, all of these flocks start their way on. It's now the next night. It took them all day to collect the flocks, to give the shepherds the orders, and to get the procession on its way. It took him the whole day. And now he's going to sleep, same place, in this camp that he set up. And then suddenly, what happens? He gets up in the middle of the night. Again, he is still troubled. He still can't sleep. At least that's the implication. He's going to sleep, but suddenly he's up in the middle of the night. And what does he do in the middle of the night? Now think about it. In the middle of the night, he doesn't have, whole lot of electricity going on, lighting it up like it's daylight. It's the middle of the night. It's pitch black. He's in the middle of nowhere, traveling on the way home. What does he do? He takes his two wives, his two servants, the other two wives, what's the word? I can't think of the word. His two wives, concubines. We'll use the word shivcha, maidservants. And there's 11 children. Question for you: how many children do we read about last week were born to Yaakov? How many children? 12, not 11. Why does the parsha say 11? Great question. The parsha will have a field day with it, but only 11 children somehow get mentioned. One has disappeared. He crosses the ford of Yabok. If you'll do one of these, if you'll go to where the Yabok meets the Jordan, you'll see that the Yabok has all these different places where you can ford across it. It's during the winter season and the rainy season. It's a pretty powerful tributary. The Yabok is one of the main tributaries of the Jordan River. But Yaakov traverses this ford. There are places where you can ford the river, or whatever you want to call it. Mavar Yabok. Okay. He takes everybody. So he transfers all of his possessions, his whole camp, in the middle of the night. Remember, can't see where he's going. So you would think you would want to wait till it was daylight. So if he's crossing at night, obviously we would tend to think that there might be some military implication to this. He is trying to avoid something. That's why he is moving his position at night. Armies do that when they want to disappear or reappear. We don't know which, but clearly Yaakov changes his mind, because first he was going to stay on the other side overnight. Decides, no, can't wait, got to go, got to move. And the implication is he wakes everybody up in the middle of the night because he can't sleep, moves everything across the river, which is not an easy passage in the middle of the night, pitch black. Now, maybe they had, they may have had torches or whatever, but it's still, if it's rocky ground and it's a dangerous current, this is a very hazardous thing. Those of you who are on the American side, think of Washington crossing the Delaware in the middle of the night, with a running current, with a running stream, with a whole army. That's basically what Yaakov's trying to do. He's taking his whole camp, all of his sheep, his animals, everything, all across this ford in the middle of pitch black.
From a military point of view, it's very hard to understand. If he's concerned about being surprised by Eisav, then having a river in front of him is a heck of a lot than having a river behind him.
Okay.
And if maybe the concern is he assumes Eisav won't be, and that crossing the river makes him very vulnerable. So he'd rather have done that.
Okay. All right, 1 second. Yes, I just want to repeat what David said for the people on the call. David suggested that militarily, it might not necessarily make the most sense to move where you no longer have this river, the Yabok, in front of you between you and Eisav. But on the other hand, while you're crossing the river, you're very vulnerable. So since he might not have expected Eisav to move at night, he figured it was better to cross at night than to cross during the day when Eisav could have him in a very vulnerable position should he choose to attack while he was in the middle of crossing the river. That's a valid concern. Yossi wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Not any source. He was afraid of turncoat. These guys that he's sending malachim with the property, right?
Okay.
One of them would either allow himself to be tried by or be tortured, whatever, to get the information, whatever the case is.
Of where Yaakov was camped.
He doesn't have to trust anybody when he gets died. He left this stuff. You can read it either way. You obviously are reading it.
Yeah.
I always learned this. He left everything and everybody.
Oh.
So just himself, his wife, his kids.
Oh, okay. That's okay. That's interesting. Yossi said that the concern might have been somebody revealing his location to Eisav, and he's afraid that Eisav might attack at night. So he wants to switch his position. And Yossi's statement is that he just moved the people over, nothing else, left all the possessions behind. That's, as I said, that's a possibility. I've always looked at it by Yaveret Ashelo as meaning all that he had. Okay. Again, different ways of looking at the pasuk. Any comments from over on the call? Anybody? Okay, moving on. Now, Yaakov has transferred everybody, maybe everything, we're not sure about you guys. Suddenly, we have this interlude with this person that he meets and has this wrestling match with. Yaakov is left alone on the east side of the, or I guess it would be the north side or the east side of the Jordan. He's still on Lavan's side. He hasn't yet crossed into Eretz Yisrael, and suddenly somebody comes and wrestles with him till the whole rest of the night. And finds out he can't defeat him. And ultimately, Yaakov is basically able to overcome this person. And the question we have to understand is, who is he fighting with? Rambam says this whole thing, by the way, is a dream. He didn't fight with anybody except he's dreaming that he's having this struggle. And clearly, that would make sense, given we know what, I mean, if he happened to sleep happened to overcome him, clearly that would make sense that something was bothering him, that he's having this struggle within himself. Again, the Midrash wants to tell us, of course, that this is Esav's angel who comes to fight with him. And there's a lot of symbolism. I really don't want to go into all that symbolism right now. I wanted to focus again. Notice the key word here, ki'im berachtani. Yaakov says to this person who's fighting with him, I'm not going to let you go, because Yaakov seems to have won the wrestling match and pinned the other guy. Ki'im berachtani, unless you give me a blessing. Okay? So he asks him what his name is, and he tells him, and he says, Yaakov is my name. Okay? And he says, you shouldn't call your name Yaakov, which symbolizes Akev, the one who is deceitful, but Yisrael, which is Yashar, upright. You fought with men and with God and with people, or with Elohim. Here could be mighty men, and Anashim could be men of importance. Batuchal, and you've been successful. Yaakov then asks him for his name. He says, I can't give you my name, but by Yivarach Otosham, but he still gives him this blessing. Again, notice this concept of blessing. A very theme word. If we go back to last week, or was it 2 weeks ago, is parshat. The whole interaction between Yaakov and Eisav revolves around a bechorah and a beracha. And again, Yaakov's obsession with panim. Yaakov calls the name of the place Peniel, the panim avel, the face of God. Ki ra'iti Elohim panim el panim. I've seen God face to face. Vatinatel nafshi, my soul has been saved. Yaakov has released by this struggle, whether this is an internal struggle in a dream or an external struggle with some celestial or human creature, we don't know. This is, again, this Ish who fights with him is the same as Rabbi mentioned last week, the Ish who suddenly appears out of nowhere and directs Yosef to his brothers, how he's the person who makes sure that, Rivka gets to the well Rachel gets to the well, Tzipporah gets to the well, everybody gets to the right place. We don't know who he is, but that's not the point. The point is, because of this struggle that Yaakov goes through, he seems to have freed himself of all of his worries. Vatinatzel nafshi, I'm okay. Whatever was bothering me, I think I'm ready to handle it now. I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to leave the past behind and move forward on a new direction. That new direction is I've got to confront my brother. I shouldn't be afraid of him. I shouldn't be running away. I got to confront him. Whatever happens, and then we move on.
Aaron, if it was only a dream,
yes.
How come his leg was?
How come he was limping? Yes, if it was, that's a very good question. Yeah, if it was only a dream, how does he end up with this leg injury? This is first, as I said, the fact that it's a dream is Rambam's Perush. Many of the commentaries ask this question, and many try to answer it and say that it was a psychosomatic suggestion that he was limping because he felt it. It was such a realistic dream that he felt it. As I said, it's a valid question, and the answer is a valid answer, but we don't know.
But then we can eat that part of the body then.
No. Not eating the Gid HaNasheh has absolutely, I mean, it's in theory, the Torah, okay, I'll comment on Gid HaNasheh. I wasn't planning on commenting on Yeshua. The fact that the Torah gives us a mitzvah not to eat Gid HaNasheh is one of the 613 commandments. Even though the Torah places it here in the context of this story, in theory, I could say that it has nothing to do with the story. It's one of the 613 commandments that God wants us to have. Why? Great question. But this is where the Torah places it to give us a, quote, reason for it. The reason is because you're not allowed to eat it. Because it makes it so you have to. Again, that's a whole different story for the kashrut. When we get to the parshat on kashrut and shlita and whatever, that's a valid question. Why this part? But again, I want to. It's a great question, but I'm as I said,
Okay.
We'll leave it for a future point. Okay, Yossi wants to say, I've never seen the Minchat Chinuch. Minchat Chinuch wants to suggest that the only time Gid HaNasheh is usher is not allowed to be eaten is dorais if you're eating a human being, which means that you've been in some natural disaster and that's the only food left available. Okay, I don't want to get into that discussion of that anyway. But again, notice the word panim, face, panim, panim el panim, penuel, peniel. Again, this theme word runs through because Yaakov is still, now he's going forward. We're going to meet face to face. Panim el panim. We're going to meet face to face. Okay, so we now get to now we've got through Yaakov's anguish, his preparation, his reconciliation with himself. And now we get to the actual meeting. By the way, in your printed Chumashim, this starts a new chapter. In the Torah, it's not. It's all the same chapter. It's all written in the same paragraph. But whoever decided to translate the Bible and write the paragraph changes, this is a different story. That was his preparation. Now we get into the real meeting, which is basically the next chapter in there. Okay. Vayishlach Yaakov Eisav, he gets up the next morning and he sees Eisav is coming with his 400 men. And now, interestingly enough, before he said he divided the camp into two groups. Here he doesn't. He splits up the children. He gives each child, he allocates each child to its mother. And the rationale for that, I would guess, is he figures Eisav isn't going to harm the women and children. So leave the kids alone with their mother. I'll go meet Eisav, whoever's, and I'll bring my men with me. And if there's going to be a war, there'll be a war. But the women and children should be left aside. But he arranges each of the children behind him in the following order. First, he puts the maidservants and their children, Leah and her children, and of course, who's last? Rachel and Yosef. So again, we see that he's putting the more beloved children / wife / children in the order of clearly his preference for, or his love for that group. And again, this is going to be a theme that we're going to see throughout the rest of Sefer Bereshit, is the problems that this is the fact that Yaakov has a favorite wife and a less favorite wife, and the challenges that that's going to bring, which will rise to the fore and become the central theme of the next couple of parashiyot. Okay. But what does Yaakov do? He puts himself in front. If Esav's going to get to anybody, he's got to get through me first. What does he do? He bows down 7 times until I guess each time he bows, he's bowing as he's walking. He doesn't say that he bows, he prostrates himself. He's only bowing. Okay, so he's bowing and stepping it, presumably, so that he's reaching his brother. And in verse 4 is the key verse here. Okay. Vayaratz Eisav likroto. Eisav runs to meet him by Yichabkehu, and he gives him a big hug. Vayipol al tzavarav, he falls on his shoulder. Vayishakehu, and he kisses him. Vayivku, and they cry. Now, the word Vayishakehu, he kissed him. Or no, it's okay. He kissed him. It was nice. They reconciled. We would say, "Wow, this is great." You know, it's only one little problem. The Torah, in the printed Torah scroll, in the written Torah scroll, so not your printed Chumash. I mean, your printed Chumash probably mentions it. In the written Torah scroll, every single letter of this word has one little dot over it. Not very many of those in the whole Torah. And guess what? Why are they there? What are they supposed to be telling us? Machloket, guess what? This is machloket about how we interpret these dots. Could knock me over with a sledgehammer, right? Very, very surprising. Okay. I forgot who the first protagonist is who says, Vayishakehu comes to tell us that we shouldn't think that Eisav kissed him wholeheartedly. The dots are to remind us that he kissed him, and he did not really intend to kiss Yaakov. He really was kissing him to try to harm him. One medrash goes as far as to say that he tried to bite him as he was kissing him. And the medrash then goes further and says that Yaakov's neck turns to marble, so Eisav breaks his teeth. Nice medrash. Okay, the simple verse says, "Vayishakehu," we kissed him, and Rabbi Shimon, I think it's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, if I'm not mistaken, who tells us that we know it's a fact, it's a part of life that Eisav hates Yaakov. That there's going to be anti-Semitism in every generation, whether we like it or not. But this one moment, Eisav kisses him sincerely, and that's what the dots are there to tell us, that he kisses him wholeheartedly, sincerely. He is willing to forget the past and start a new chapter. He is willing to forego what happened 20 years ago. Now, is that because he just got this $1 million gift? Don't know. Is it because he has seen Yaakov bow to him and call him my master? I don't know. Is it because he realizes that it's futile to try to argue against God? Maybe. We don't know. We have no idea why. All we know is that, at least according to Shimon Yochai, and as I said, according to the plain shot of the pasuk, Eisav has accepted the fact that Yaakov is going to be the heir. He's going to get Eretz Yisrael. I'm perfectly happy in Seir, living my life, and I don't need to be the Jewish people going into exile for 400 years. I don't need it. I don't need all the Torah and the mitzvot. He is just like Yaakov is reconciled that he's got to face Eisav. Eisav seems here to be reconciled with his destiny as not being part of the Jewish nation, and it seems that he's accepted that. Whether he's okay with it, I don't know. But clearly he has accepted that, at least from the literal sense of Vayishakehu. Okay? The story then continues. He picks his eyes, he sees the kids, and all the wives and kids come and bow to Eisav. And now the Torah in Pasuk Chet begins with this dialogue that they have after they've met. Vayomer, Eisav says, what was this? All these herds and all this whole camp that I met coming to meet me? Vayomer, and Yaakov answered him, to find favor in my master's eyes. And now Eisav says, Yesh lirav, I got plenty. I don't need your gifts, man. But I got plenty. Yesh lichilacha shalach, keep what you've got. Vayomer Yaakov says, no, I'll not. Please. If I have found favor in your eyes, take my gift, this gift from my hand. Ki al kain ra'iti, again, there's that key word, fanecha, I've seen your face. Tirot pnei Elohim, like I've seen the face of God. Vatirtzeni, and I have been accepted. And you have accepted me, or I have been accepted. Okay, again, kachna, what does he say? Now, he doesn't call it a mincha, he doesn't call it a gift. Kachna, what's that key word? Birchati. Take this bracha that I'm bringing you. Ki chanani Elokim, because God is gracious to me. But what does he say? He doesn't say yesh li rav, I have plenty. He says yesh li kol, I have everything. He twists his arm and he accepts it. But I think in these two phrases, in this verse, is really the Torah wants us to understand what it means to be a follower of Eisav versus what it means to be a follower of Yaakov. To be a follower of Eisav means yesh li rav. I got plenty. You know, I can always use more. I can always accept more. I can always have more power, more glory, more riches. A Yaakov understands yesh li kol. I have everything I need. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given me what I need, I have everything I need. When I realize that everything I have, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given me to be able to fulfill my mission in life, I have everything. By the way, this phrase yesh li kol is something we sort of mentioned in Birkat Hamazon when we say bakol mikol kol. That this kol comes from that bakol mikol kol. The bakol is Shem Beirachet Avram bakol. The mikol is Yitzchak. V'ochal mikol, I ate mikol when Yaakov brings him the food, and here is Yaakov saying yesh li kol, I have everything. So again, this concept that if Hashem is with us, or we realize that Hashem is with us, then we have everything we need. And I think this pasuk of yesh li kol is basically the basis for the statement in Pirkei Avot, Ezo Asher Sameach B'Cholko, who is happy, one who is satisfied with what he has. Again, the evils, the problems of people who pursue wealth, as Kohelet tells us, Oiv Kesef, or Yispak Kesef, one who is in love with money will never have enough, no matter how much they have. And this really, I think, with this, basically, this is almost the conclusion of the story between Yaakov and Eisav. It's here to show us this sharp contrast between a Jewish outlook on life and a non-Jewish outlook on life. So I think it's worth mentioning again the concept of this bracha and the panim as two focal points of what Yaakov is worried about and is able to overcome, this need to face his destiny and to face the reality of his brother. Yes.
Could be just returning to Eisav, bracha that should have been Eisav.
Yes. I think Rabbi Sachs brings that down very, very prominently in a number of his discussions of this week's parsha. That, as for those who weren't on the call, couldn't hear, David to someone said that when Yaakov is saying "Kachnat birchati," one of the interpretations given is that he is basically telling Eisav, take back the blessing that I got under false pretenses. You can have it, that I'm giving it back to you. Which is a very valid, and that would fit in with this concept that Yaakov has accepted the fact that he has to reconcile with Eisav, that he has to face up to his past in order to be able to face the future without this dread fear of his brother. He's got to face him. He's got to face that he did something wrong to him, even if maybe it was right according to his mother, that he wronged Eisav, and therefore he has to make that up to him. And I think that's part and parcel of his willingness to being ready to face Eisav. That's all part and parcel of this whole parsha. Okay. Ultimately, the parsha ends very, very almost anticlimactically, if you will. Eisav offers that they should go together. And Yaakov says, no, I've got slow moving. Now here's to your point, Yossi. He says, he's got all this cattle, all this sheep. So I'm assuming he didn't leave them back across on the other side of the river. So I assume he's taken them all, and therefore he has to travel much more slowly. Eisav is an army of 400 men. Presumably they're on, camelback, horseback, donkey back. We don't know. And they, by the way, they don't get mentioned. That's it. They've disappeared from the rest of the story. Once Eisav and Yaakov have this hug and kiss. The 400 people seem to disappear. Midrashically, this is a very, very interesting midrash that says that these 400 people are a quote reappear when David is fighting against Amalek, and there's one of his battles that says that there were 400 men on horsemen who are able to escape the battle. And Rashi and the Midrash comments there that these 400 are in the merit of these 400 people who sort of, didn't come and attack Yaakov. Those 400 are saved later when David is fighting against Amalek. So just to wrap up, really, again, I think the key lessons of the parsha are that, firstly, we're always going to have anti-Semitism. That's one thing that's I guess it's part and parcel of the world until the world is able to recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu and recognize why and what we were chosen for. And we have to start that. We have to first understand what being chosen means and what we were chosen for. Being chosen doesn't mean you're better than anybody else. It means you have a unique mission that God has given you to teach the world about God, because that's what he tells Avram. That's our unique mission, is to teach the world that they can run a society successfully with tzedakah and mishpat. That's the key lesson the Jewish people, as a people in Israel, are supposed to be teaching the world. That anti-Semitism will end when we've successfully taught the people to acknowledge Hashem and to understand what our role was. Secondly, that while we haven't yet reached that point, we have to always be ready militarily, non-militarily, and we always have to remember that it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's, no matter which direction we go and which direction we're going to be pursuing, we need HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help. And we hope and pray that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should continue to bless us so that we can continue to succeed as the Jewish people and continue to grow and spread that word about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And thank you very much all, and have a wonderful rest of the week. Questions, comments, and feedback.
Excuse me, David, I must go. Thank you very much, as usual.
Okay, take good care, be well, and try to stay dry.
See you next week, Hope.
Take good care, bye-bye. Okay. All right. Okay.
Have a
Good
good one.
evening, all. Take good care.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, be well.
Bye-bye.
Okay.